May 20th, 1941. 5:15 a.m. Above Maleme Airfield, Crete. The dawn is a thin, bruised purple along the Aegean horizon. The sea below is glassy and cold, broken only by the slow pulse of destroyer wakes far offshore. Inside the belly of a Ju-52 transport, the air smells of oil, canvas, and fear that no one admits. Metal rattles. Rivets sing. The aircraft shudders through morning turbulence as if the sky itself is resisting them. Oberfeldwebel Karl Weber wipes condensation from the small, oval window with his glove. Frost beads along the frame despite the Mediterranean warmth outside. He can barely see the island yet, just a dark silhouette rising out of the sea like a sleeping beast. Crete, the last great Allied foothold in the eastern Mediterranean. Around him, the men of the Fallschirmjäger sit shoulder to shoulder on narrow benches, knees brushing. Their steel helmets are painted with thin, yellow identification bands. Parachute harnesses cut into their shoulders. MP-40 submachine guns rest across thighs. A few men finger the straps of their RZ-16 parachutes, feeling for reassurance in familiar buckles. No one speaks much. They don't need to. This is Operation Merker, the largest airborne invasion the world has ever seen. Weber glances down the cabin. Young faces, old faces. Veterans of Norway, of the Low Countries, of the brutal fighting in Rotterdam. These are Hitler's elite airborne soldiers, trained to drop behind enemy lines, to fight isolated, to survive when cut off. They have been told that Crete is lightly defended, that British, Greek, and Commonwealth troops are scattered, demoralized, unprepared. They have been told this will be quick. At the front of the aircraft, Major Friedrich August Freiherr von der Haidt leans against the bulkhead, eyes steady, posture rigid. A legend among paratroopers, already wounded once in battle, already decorated. His men trust him. More importantly, Berlin trusts him to deliver results. The intercom crackles. Stand by. Outside, hundreds of Ju-52s are already threading the sky in long, vulnerable lines. Above them, Bf-109 fighters circle like hawks. Farther out to sea, the distant thump of naval guns echoes faintly, carried on the wind. Weber's heart beats so hard he feels it in his throat. The aircraft begins to descend. Below, Maleme Airfield comes into focus. A strip of pale dust and concrete carved into the Cretan hills. British anti-aircraft positions dot the surrounding ridges. You can almost trace the lines of trenches, the dark mouths of gun pits, the tiny figures already scrambling into firing positions. The first bursts of flak blossom in the sky. Black puffs. White streaks. The Ju-52 lurches violently as shrapnel rattles against its skin. Somewhere in the formation, another transport catches a direct hit and tumbles, trailing smoke like a wounded bird. Inside Weber's plane, the lights flicker. Hook up. Carabiners click. Static lines snap taut. The red light above the door glows. Wind howls through gaps in the fuselage. The island rushes up at them faster than it should. Green light. Rouse. 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 Weber moves. The world tilts, flips, explodes into noise as he is spat out into open air. For a heartbeat, there is nothing but sky. Then his chute blossoms above him, snapping open with a violent jerk that drives the breath from his lungs. Crete spins beneath him, olive groves, stone walls, narrow roads, clusters of whitewash houses. Smoke drifts from burning buildings. Traces stitch thin, lethal lines through the air. Around him, dozens of parachutes bloom like white mushrooms. Some men drift calmly. Others twist helplessly, tangled in their own lines. And then Weber hears something that does not belong. Not just gunfire. Not just artillery. Voices. Shouting, angry, guttural, frantic, in Greek. As Weber descends, he sees them. Not soldiers. Civilians. Men in dark coats. Shepherds with crooks. Farmers in work shirts. Old women in black, skirts fluttering in the wind. Teenagers. Boys. They are not running. They are advancing. Some carry ancient bolt-action rifles. Others clutch shotguns, knives, axes, sickles, even pitchforks. One man raises a hunting rifle and fires straight up into the drifting parachutes. Another runs toward a paratrooper who has already landed, screaming as he swings a scythe. Weber hits the ground hard, rolls, collapses against a low stone wall. He struggles out of his harness, heart pounding, ears ringing. Before he can even orient himself, a Greek civilian is already charging toward him, middle-aged, bearded, eyes blazing, holding a rusted rifle that looks older than the Kaiser. Shots crack. Bullets slap into the dirt inches from Weber's face. This was not in the briefing. This was not supposed to happen. Somewhere nearby, a German screams. A paratrooper lands on a roof and is dragged off it before he can unclip his chute. Another is stabbed with a bayonet scavenged from a fallen British rifle. A third is beaten with a club as his parachute snags in an olive tree. Above them, more Ju-52s roar overhead, dropping wave after wave of men into a widening circle of chaos. Weber scrambles to his feet, raises his MP-40, and fires. The first burst drops the charging civilian in a spray of dust and blood. Silence, for a fraction of a second. Then the shouting doubles. The island wakes up. Maleme is no longer a landing zone. It is a trap. And the Fallschirmjäger, drifting helplessly from the sky, are walking straight into it. Weber's world shrinks to 50 meters. Smoke drifts low over the olive groves, sweet and choking. The air is a tapestry of sound, the staccato bark of milligram 34s, the deeper cough of British Bren guns, the sharper crack of Greek rifles, and beneath it all the relentless drone of Ju-52 engines still circling overhead. He throws himself flat as a British 3-inch mortar rounds lands somewhere upslope. The blast punches a crater into the red earth, showering him with pebbles and shattered branches. Above him, a parachute snags in a cypress tree and hangs there like a white corpse. To his left, Gefreiter Lenz is trying to cut himself free from his harness, panic in his eyes. Before Weber can reach him, 2 Cretan boys, no older than 16, sprint out from behind a stone wall. One fires a shotgun from the hip. The blast rips through Lenz's chest, flinging him backward in a spray of blood. The boys vanish as quickly as they appeared. Weber feels it then, not fear, but something colder. Realization. This is not a battlefield he understands. No front lines. No clear enemy positions. Just walls, trees, houses, and people who all seem to want him dead. Over the noise, he hears a whistle, sharp, practiced. Fallschirmjäger training cuts through instinct. He moves toward the sound, low and fast, diving from wall to wall. Major von der Haidt has already assembled what he can. A handful of men, maybe 20, crouched in a shallow depression near a dried irrigation ditch. Their helmets are smeared with dust. One man clutches his side where shrapnel has torn through his uniform. Another is trying to clear a jam in his milligram 34 with shaking hands. Von der Haidt stands upright, impossibly calm, binoculars raised toward Hill 107, the high ground that dominates Maleme Airfield. That hill, he says, voice steady despite the chaos, decides everything. Weber follows his gaze. British and New Zealand troops are dug in along the crest. You can see their helmets bobbing above sandbags, the glint of steel as they move from position to position. Traces flicker down the slope in disciplined bursts. The airfield below is still in Allied hands, for now. A Ju-52 swoops low, too low, trying to drop more men closer to the strip. A burst of anti-aircraft fire stitches across its fuselage. The aircraft shudders, dips a wing, and crashes in a fireball just beyond the perimeter fence. Burning debris rains down like meteors. Somewhere behind Weber, the Tavernidis Bridge erupts in smoke. German engineers who landed near the river are already fighting desperately to secure it, knowing that without that bridge, reinforcements and supplies will be cut off. The plan is unraveling. In Berlin, they had spoken of precision, of surprise, of overwhelming airborne force. Here on Crete, it is fragmentation, scattered drops, isolated squads, men fighting alone in orchards and alleyways, often outnumbered, often hunted. A sudden roar. Low over the field, Bf 109 streak past, strafing Allied positions along Hill 107. Dirt and sandbags erupt under their fire. For a moment, the British guns fall silent. Now, von der Haidt shouts. The paratroopers surge forward. Weber runs. His boots pound against hard earth. Bullets snap overhead. He vaults a stone wall and lands in a tangle of vines, rolling, coming up firing. Ahead, a British trench line lies half-shattered from the strafing run. 2 New Zealand soldiers scramble to reposition a Bren gun. Weber fires first. The gunner falls. The second man throws up his hands, then thinks better of it and dives back into the trench as German grenades tumble in behind him. On Hill 107, the line begins to waver. But below, The civilians have not vanished. They appear again, from doorways, from behind boulders, from narrow mountain paths, faster than any soldier can track. A priest in black robes raises a hunting rifle and fires. A group of farmers drags a wounded paratrooper into a courtyard, their faces grim and wordless. A woman hurls a brick from a rooftop that shatters against a German helmet. War, Weber realizes, is no longer just soldiers. It is the island itself. As he reaches the crest of the slope, his lungs burning, he sees Maleme Airfield more clearly. Smoke drifts across the runway. Wrecked aircraft litter the edges. British trucks are hastily reversing, engines screaming. A shout goes up through the German ranks. The British are pulling back from parts of Hill 107. Not retreating in panic, but repositioning, consolidating, falling to secondary defences farther inland. For the first time since dawn, Weber feels a flicker of hope. But it is fragile. Behind him, German casualties are mounting at a horrifying rate. Men lie sprawled across olive groves, parachutes still attached like grotesque wings. Others crawl toward cover, bleeding, calling for medics that do not exist. Von der Haidt moves among them, directing fire, rallying stragglers, ignoring his own danger. His voice cuts through the din, sharp and authoritative. Hold the crest. Another Ju-52 comes in. This one is different. Instead of paratroopers, its belly doors are open wider, and as it skims perilously low over the strip, shapes tumble out that are not men, crates, bundles, machine guns, ammunition, radios. Supply canisters slam into the ground, some shattering, others miraculously intact. Weber dives for one. His fingers tear at the straps. Inside, more ammunition, desperately needed. Above, more transports approach, braving the same gauntlet of fire. The battle tilts, ever so slightly. On Hill 107, German machine guns are now in place, stitching fire down toward the airfield. British artillery from farther inland begins to answer, shells whistling overhead with a mournful scream before detonating. And still, from the villages and farmhouses, the Cretans keep coming. Not in ranks, not in formation, but relentless. Weber sees an elderly man step out onto the runway itself, silhouetted against a burning wreck, and fire a single, deliberate shot at an incoming Ju-52. The transport veers, clips a tree, and cartwheels into the dust. The paratroopers have taken ground. But Crete is not beaten. As the sun climbs higher, burning away the morning haze, the island reveals itself in harsh, unforgiving light. Every hill, every wall, every grove now a potential battlefield. Weber kneels on Hill 107, breathing hard, rifle resting across his knees. Below him, Maleme Airfield smoulders. Above him, more aircraft are on the way. And all around him, the dead and wounded of both sides lie tangled together in the red Cretan soil. The first day of Operation Merkur is far from over. And the price of this easy victory is already becoming clear. By mid-morning, the wind carries a new smell across Maleme, cordite mixed with burning olive oil and the metallic tang of blood. The sun is higher now, merciless, flattening every shadow. Heat shimmers above the runway like a mirage. Wreckage smoulders at the edges of the strip, a Ju-52 split in two, its tail pointing skyward like a broken finger, twisted crates of supplies spilled open, belts of milligram 34 ammunition gleaming in the dust, parachutes draped over barbed wire like torn flags. Oberfeldwebel Weber has lost track of time. It feels like hours. It has been barely 3. From his position along Hill 107, he can see almost everything, and that, he realizes, is both a blessing and a curse. Below, the airfield is slowly slipping into German hands. Fallschirmjäger machine gun nests now dominate key points along the perimeter. Engineers are working feverishly to clear wreckage from the runway, hacking apart burning fuselages with axes, dragging twisted metal aside with ropes. A battered radio set crackles with static, struggling to maintain contact with the fleet offshore. And still, the sky is full of aircraft. Ju-52s come in wave after wave, flying impossibly low, wings skimming the treetops. Some make it. Many do not. Each arrival is a gamble between life and death, discipline and disaster. Weber watches one transport dip too far, clipping a stone farmhouse with its wing. The impact peels the aircraft open like a tin can. Paratroopers spill out before it even hits the ground, tumbling through dust and fire. Some rise and run. Others do not move at all. A shout pulls Weber's attention back to the crest. A New Zealand counterattack is forming. They come up the slope in small, determined groups, disciplined, grim, advancing from shattered trench to shattered trench. Their uniforms are sweat-darkened. Their faces are set. Bren guns chatter in controlled bursts, laying down covering fire as riflemen move forward. Von der Haidt is there immediately. He moves along the line like a conductor, pointing, shouting, adjusting fields of fire. His calm is almost unnatural. A burst of machine gun fire kicks up dust inches from his boots, but he does not flinch. Short bursts. Conserve ammunition. Weber drops to one knee, sights along his MP40, and squeezes the trigger. The recoil is familiar, almost comforting. A New Zealander stumbles, then another. The advance falters, not broken, but slowed. Artillery speaks. From somewhere inland, British 25-pounders open up, their shells arcing high before crashing down around Hill 107. The earth heaves. Stones explode into shrapnel. A nearby olive tree disintegrates in a spray of splinters and smoke. Weber is thrown flat. His ears ring so loudly he can barely hear his own heartbeat. When he looks up, the world seems tilted. Men are down everywhere, some alive, some not. A German medic crawls from body to body, dragging a wounded man to cover, blood soaking into his sleeve. Then the civilians return. Not in one mass this time, but in dozens of small, furious skirmishes along the edges of the battlefield. Weber sees a group of Cretan men climbing through a ravine below the airfield, moving low, using the terrain like soldiers who know every inch of it. One carries a battered Lee Enfield rifle taken from a fallen Commonwealth trooper. Another hefts a long knife tucked into his belt. They are not trying to storm Hill 107. They are hunting. They target isolated paratroopers who land too far from the strip. They ambush stragglers trying to reach the German line. They melt back into the landscape before anyone can mount a proper pursuit. At one point, Weber watches a young paratrooper, no more than 19, get his parachute tangled in a tall cypress tree near a farmhouse. The boy struggles helplessly, kicking, reaching for his knife. A door creaks open below. An elderly woman steps out, face carved by years of sun and grief. She says nothing. She picks up a stone from the ground and hurls it upward with shocking strength. It strikes the paratrooper's helmet with a dull, brutal thud. More villagers appear. Men, women, even children. Weber wants to look away. He cannot. The paratrooper disappears from view beneath them. A scream cuts off. Silence follows, heavy and final. On Hill 107, a runner stumbles up to von der Haidt, breathless, dust-streaked. Major, reports from Tavronitis. Bridge secured, but under constant attack. Civilians everywhere. Von der Haidt nods, jaw tight. He knows what this means. Even if Maleme falls, even if the runway is fully secured, holding Crete will be a battle fought in every village, every ravine, every mountain path. A deep, thunderous sound rolls across the airfield. Engines. Not Ju-52s this time. Lower. Heavier. Weber turns. On the horizon, moving in tight formation, he sees them, gliders. DFS 230 assault gliders, their sleek silhouettes slicing through the sky without engines, guided only by tow planes that peel away at the last moment. They carry something precious: anti-tank guns, heavier machine guns, and, most importantly, troops who can land intact and organized. The first glider touches down on the far end of the runway, skidding violently, tearing up dust as it comes to a halt. Its nose shatters on impact. Men spill out, already moving, already fighting. A second glider lands. Then a third. Cheers ripple through the German line, brief, fierce, almost desperate. Reinforcements. Real reinforcements. But the British see it too. From positions farther inland, artillery fire shifts, now hammering the airfield itself. Shells crash along the runway, scattering engineers, shattering crates, igniting fuel drums that erupt into towering pillars of black smoke. Weber crouches behind a low wall as a blast throws burning debris over his head. When he looks again, the runway is a hellscape. Fire, smoke, bodies, wreckage, and still, aircraft keep coming. The battle has crossed a threshold. It is no longer just about landing. It is about control. About who will own this strip of dust and concrete that now costs more lives with every passing minute. By late afternoon, word spreads along the German line. Parts of Maleme airfield are secure enough to begin landing larger transports. The first true troop-carrying Ju-52 touches down. Wheels screech. The aircraft lurches. Men pour out in disciplined ranks, moving quickly to reinforce positions along Hill 107 and the perimeter. Weber feels a surge of grim satisfaction. They are winning, tactically, at least. But as he looks down toward the villages dotting the hillsides, he knows something else just as clearly. Crete will not submit, and every meter taken will demand blood. As the sun dips lower, painting the sky in brutal shades of red and orange, Weber sits amid the shattered stones of Hill 107, hands trembling slightly, ears still ringing. Below him, Maleme Airfield hums with wounded life, engines, gunfire, shouts, orders. Around him, the dead lie where they fell, German, British, Greek, civilian, all blended together in the same dust. The first battle of Crete is nearly over. The war for the island has only just begun. Night falls slowly over western Crete, but it never brings silence. From Hill 107, Oberfeld-Weibel Weber watches darkness creep across Maleme like a tide of ink. The airfield below glows in patches of orange where fuel still burns, each flicker throwing long, dancing shadows across the broken runway. Searchlights snap on in jagged arcs, sweeping the surrounding hills, cutting briefly through olive groves and stone walls before sliding away again. The sky is no longer full of aircraft. It is full of noise. Distant gunfire echoes from the mountains. Sporadic bursts crack from the outskirts of nearby villages. Somewhere to the east, artillery thumps rhythmically, a deep, methodical drumbeat that never quite stops. The battle has changed its shape. In daylight, it was chaos dropped from the sky. At night, it becomes something slower, more intimate, more terrifying. Weber sits with his back against a shattered stone wall, cradling his MP40 across his knees. His hands are black with soot and dried blood that is not all his own. Around him, small fires burn in makeshift braziers as exhausted Fallschirmjäger try to keep warm and alert. They have taken Maleme Airfield. But taken feels like a fragile word. Engineers move in the darkness with lanterns hooded in cloth, clearing wreckage by touch as much as sight. A damaged Ju-52 sits like a wounded animal near the runway's edge, its fuselage riddled with holes, its cockpit glass shattered. Men with crowbars and blowtorches work in grim silence to carve a path around it. Somewhere down the strip, a new wave of transports has managed to land, pilots guiding their aircraft in with almost suicidal precision by the glow of flares. Each arrival brings more men, more ammunition, more guns. Each arrival also brings more risk, more shattered metal, more bodies dragged to the side of the runway. A runner stumbles up the slope toward Hill 107, breath ragged. Major von der Haidt requests you at the command post. Weber pushes himself upright, muscles aching in protest. He descends toward a shallow depression near the crest where a top has been stretched over a crude command position. Lantern light spills out, illuminating maps spread across ammunition crates. Von der Haidt stands over them, sleeves rolled, face drawn with fatigue but eyes still sharp. Sit rep, the major says without looking up. A staff sergeant points with a grease-stained finger. Airfield mostly secure. Tavronitis bridge holding, but under constant harassment. Reports of civilians cutting telephone lines and attacking isolated pickets. Weber listens, jaw tightening. Von der Haidt straightens, finally meeting his eyes. You saw them today, didn't you? Weber hesitates, then nods. The major exhales slowly. Berlin did not. Outside the command post, a burst of gunfire rattles from somewhere downslope, close enough to make several men flinch. The searchlights swing toward the sound, catching a flash of movement in the olive trees. Machine guns open up. Muzzles flare. Leaves and branches explode into shredded confetti. When the firing stops, the night seems even heavier. Later, in the deepest part of the darkness, Weber is sent with a small patrol to secure the western edge of the airfield. The ground is uneven, broken by low walls, dry ditches, and tangled groves. They move in a tight wedge, boots crunching softly on gravel, weapons held ready. The silence is wrong. Too thick. Too watchful. Halfway to their objective, Weber hears it, a soft scrape of stone, the faint creak of leather. He raises his fist. The patrol freezes. From the shadow of a ruined farmhouse, a figure steps into the lantern light. A Cretan man. Not young. Not old. His face is lined like the hills themselves. He holds a hunting rifle loosely at his side, barrel pointed down. Behind him, Weber can just make out more shapes in the darkness. Family, perhaps, or neighbors. For a heartbeat, No one moves. Then the man speaks in Greek, voice low, steady, utterly without fear. Weber does not understand the words. He understands the tone. Not surrender. Not pleading. Defiance. One of Weber's men, Jumpy, raises his rifle. The Cretan lifts his chin. In the same instant, from behind the wall to Weber's right, a shotgun roars. The blast tears through the patrol like a scythe through wheat. Weber is thrown sideways. His ears ring. When he scrambles up, two of his men are down, one screaming, clutching his leg, the other eerily still. Chaos erupts. The patrol returns fire blindly into the darkness. Muzzle flashes strobe across stone and foliage. The Cretan with the rifle vanishes as if swallowed by the night. By the time the firing stops, the farmhouse is empty. Only the wounded remain. Weber drags his injured comrade back toward the airfield, teeth clenched, heart hammering. The man's blood soaks into his sleeve, hot and sticky. As they reach the perimeter, flares ignite overhead, casting the landscape in harsh white light. For a moment, Crete is laid bare, every wall, every tree, every hollow revealed in stark relief. And Weber sees them. On distant ridgelines, silhouettes move. Not soldiers in formation. People. Watching. Waiting. At dawn, the airfield roars back to life. Transport aircraft land in greater numbers now, unloading not just paratroopers but mountain troops, artillery pieces, and the first light vehicles. German flags are raised over parts of Maleme. Officers speak in clipped tones about pushing east toward Chania and south toward Kania. Victory, they say, is within reach. But the price keeps rising. Reports filter in from across the island. Ambushes on roads, supply columns attacked, wounded Germans found mutilated, isolated glider crews missing entirely. In villages, reprisals begin, harsh, brutal, methodical, and the cycle of violence tightens. Weber watches a column of Gebirgsjäger march past Hill 107, their Edelweiss badges bright against their caps, faces grim beneath the morning sun. They look like men walking into a storm they cannot see. Behind them, a string of captured British and Greek soldiers is herded along the road, hands on heads, guarded by weary paratroopers. Among them, Weber spots civilians as well, men who had fought, or were accused of fighting, or simply happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Some stare at the ground. Some stare straight back. As the sun climbs higher, the island shakes with renewed artillery fire. The battle moves inland, away from Maleme, toward the heart of Crete. Weber stands on Hill 107 and looks east. Beyond the airfield lie more hills, more villages, more roads that twist through ravines like veins. Beyond that, the mountains themselves, steep and unforgiving. He thinks of the briefings back in Germany, the maps that made Crete look small, manageable, almost neat. Now, it feels endless. Alive. Hostile. Von der Heydt approaches, helmet tucked under one arm, face streaked with dust. "We took the airfield," the major says quietly. Not quite a celebration. Weber nods. They both know what that means. Taking is not the same as holding. And holding Crete will not be decided by planes and gliders alone. It will be decided in stone courtyards, mountain passes, olive groves, and darkened doorways where ordinary people have already proven they are willing to kill and die for their island. As another Ju-52 roars overhead, casting a fleeting shadow across the broken runway, Weber feels a chill that has nothing to do with the morning air. The first day of Crete is over. The reckoning has just begun. June 1st, 1941. The guns have not stopped in 12 days. What began as an airborne coup has stretched into a grinding, merciless campaign across western and central Crete. The island no longer feels like terrain on a map. It feels like a living opponent, resisting in every valley, every ridge, every village square. Oberfeldwebel Weber now moves with a different rhythm. Less haste. More caution. Every stone wall is a potential ambush. Every doorway a possible muzzle flash. Every mountain track a place where death might be waiting in silence. His unit is pushing east toward Chania, advancing along a narrow coastal road that clings to cliffs above a turquoise sea. On paper, the Germans are winning. In reality, every kilometer costs blood. The column snakes forward in tight formation, Fallschirmjäger interspersed with Gebirgsjäger mountain troops, their mules laden with ammunition and supplies. Ahead of them, engineers probe for mines and booby traps. Behind them, medics move in a constant, grim cycle, collecting wounded who will never see Germany again. Weber walks point beside a shattered stone wall, MP40 held low but ready. His helmet is dented now. His uniform torn, stitched, torn again. He has stopped counting how many nights he has slept on bare rock. As they pass a burnt-out village, Condamari, the mood turns colder. Blackened walls, roofless homes, broken furniture strewn into the street like discarded bones. A charred church bell hangs crookedly in its tower, silent. The execution field lies just beyond the village. Weber does not want to look. He looks anyway. Dozens of shallow graves line the olive grove, marked only by piles of stones. Wooden crosses lean at drunken angles. The air still carries a faint, sickly sweetness that makes the back of his throat tighten. A young Fallschirmjäger beside him mutters, "They were partisans." Weber says nothing. He knows that some were. He also knows that many were not. Farther down the road, the column halts. Gunfire cracks ahead, sharp, disciplined, close. Weber drops to one knee as rounds snap overhead. From a ravine above the road, Cretan fighters open up from hidden positions among the rocks. Their shots are precise, patient, aimed at officers and radio operators first. And milligram 34 is brought forward, set up behind a low wall, its barrel already smoking as it lays down suppressing fire. Mountain troops scramble up the slope in bounding rushes, using every fold of the ground. Weber advances behind them. Halfway up, he sees one of the defenders, a bearded man in civilian clothes, crouched behind a boulder, firing an old Lee Enfield with practiced calm. Their eyes meet for a fraction of a second. The man does not flinch. Weber fires. The Cretan jerks backward, disappearing behind the rock. The firefight lasts minutes, not hours, but it feels like an eternity. When it ends, 3 Germans lie wounded on the road below. 2 Cretans are dead among the rocks. The rest have vanished into the hills as if they were never there. The column moves on. By evening, they reach the outskirts of Chania. Smoke curls above the city. The harbour glitters under the fading sun, dotted with German and captured British vessels. On the hills overlooking the town, gunfire flickers like distant lightning. Weber is posted on a rooftop that night, overlooking a labyrinth of narrow streets and whitewashed buildings. Below, German patrols move cautiously, lanterns hooded, weapons ready. Somewhere in the darkness, a dog howls. From this vantage point, he sees something that stays with him. In a small courtyard across the street, a family gathers around a table. Grandmother, mother, 2 children, and a man who must be the father, his arm in a sling. They sit quietly, eating bread and olives by candlelight, as if war does not exist beyond their walls. A single rifle leans against the doorframe. Weber lowers his weapon. For the first time since May 20th, he feels something other than adrenaline or rage. Weariness. The next morning brings new orders. The British and Commonwealth forces are withdrawing across the island toward the south coast, aiming to evacuate from Sfakia. The Germans are to press them relentlessly, cut roads, seize passes, and prevent escape. Weber's unit is dispatched toward the White Mountains, a brutal landscape of knife-edged ridges and sheer ravines. The terrain eats men alive, heat by day, bitter cold by night, paths so narrow that a single misstep means death. Ambushes become constant. Cretan partisans, now openly coordinated with remaining Allied troops, strike supply lines, roll boulders onto mountain roads, pick off stragglers with rifles that echo like thunder in the canyons. One afternoon, Weber's patrol discovers a burnt-out truck at a hairpin turn. Its tires are slashed, it's cabridled with bullets. Inside, the driver's body sits slumped over the wheel, untouched by scavengers. Pinned to the dashboard is a handwritten note in Greek. No one can read it. No one needs to. It is a message. By June 3rd, word spreads through the German ranks that the evacuation has begun. British and New Zealand soldiers are streaming toward the coast. Warships wait offshore. The race is on. Weber fights his way through a mountain pass under withering fire. He sees Allied soldiers retreating in disciplined order, covering each other, never panicking. He sees Cretan fighters guiding them along hidden trails he could never find. At one ridge line, as dusk falls, Weber comes face to face with a lone British officer. They both freeze. For a heartbeat, neither shoots. Then distant artillery booms, breaking the spell. The officer backs away, disappearing into the rocks. Weber does not pursue. On June 5th, the last major Allied units leave Crete. German flags are raised in towns across the island. Reports filter back to Berlin proclaiming a stunning airborne victory. The celebrations in Germany are loud. On Crete, they feel hollow. Weber stands once more on Hill 107 at Maleme, looking out over the runway that started it all. Fresh graves dot the landscape now, too many to count. New wreckage litters the strip. The olive trees are scarred with bullet holes. A staff car arrives. High-ranking officers step out, clean uniforms, polished boots, smiles for the cameras. They speak of heroism, innovation, and the future of airborne warfare. Weber watches in silence. Later, he hears the news filtering through the ranks. Hitler is furious. Not at defeat, but at the cost of victory. Nearly 4,000 German paratroopers killed or wounded. Aircraft destroyed in staggering numbers. An elite force bled white in a single operation. The Führer will never again authorize a large-scale airborne invasion. The Fallschirmjäger will fight on, in Russia, in Italy, in Normandy, but never again will they drop en masse from the sky. Weber sits alone that night, back against the same broken wall where he first landed 2 weeks earlier. The island is quieter now. Not peaceful, just watchful. Somewhere in the darkness, a Cretan rifle cracks, a single, defiant shot carried on the wind. Weber does not flinch. He understands, finally, what Crete has taught them. Airplanes can take an island, but only its people can decide what it costs to hold it. Above Maleme, the stars burn cold and bright, indifferent to victory or loss. And in that silence, the true legacy of Crete is sealed, not in maps or medals, but in the blood soaked into its red soil. August 1941. Berlin. Rain streaks the tall windows of the Reich Chancellery, blurring the city into long grey lines. Inside, the air is thick with cigarette smoke and the quiet tension of men who know they are being watched, not just by their superiors, but by history itself. Oberfeldwebel Karl Weber stands at attention among a small delegation of Fallschirmjäger selected to brief senior officers on Crete. His uniform is cleaned, pressed, his medals polished until they gleam unnaturally bright. The scars on his hands are hidden beneath gloves. Across the room, a massive wall map of Europe dominates the space. Arrows, pins, and red lines marking conquests that still feel fresh. Crete is a small, almost insignificant island on that map, a speck in the Mediterranean's blue. Yet it hangs over this meeting like a shadow. Adolf Hitler sits at the head of the table, rigid, eyes flicking over reports laid before him. His finger traces a line across a document, pausing at a column of numbers that have been repeated too many times to ignore. Casualties. Aircraft losses. He does not look at Weber. He does not need to. A Luftwaffe general speaks first, voice carefully measured. Operation Merker proved the potential of airborne forces. Surprise was achieved. The objective was secured. A murmur of agreement circles the table. Then another voice cuts in, sharper, colder, that of a senior army commander. At an unacceptable cost. We bled an elite formation for an island that could have been taken by conventional means. Weber feels the words like a physical blow. He remembers Maleme's burning runway. He remembers the bodies tangled in parachutes. He remembers the sound of Cretan shotguns cracking in narrow alleys. Hitler finally looks up. His gaze is hard, almost clinical. The era of large-scale airborne operations is over. Silence falls. The words land heavier than any artillery shell. Weber stands perfectly still, but in his mind he is no longer in Berlin. He is back on Hill 107. Back in the olive groves. Back beneath a sky full of falling men. Crete, months later. Winter wind whips across Maleme airfield, rattling loose sheets of metal still clinging to wrecked aircraft. The runway has been repaired, extended, reinforced. New German installations dot the landscape. Concrete bunkers, observation posts, neatly aligned barracks. The island is occupied now, but not subdued. At night, shots still echo from the hills. Sabotage still strikes supply lines. Disappearances still occur. Weber has returned with a small detachment tasked with securing a new radar installation near the coast. His boots crunch across the same dusty ground where he first landed, now hardened by rain and time. The scars remain. Bullet-pocked walls. Shrapnel split trees. A shallow depression that was once a trench and is now a grave no one has marked. A local man watches from a distance, standing beside a flock of sheep, leaning on a wooden staff. His face gives nothing away. He does not flee. He does not advance. He simply observes. Weber meets his gaze and feels, not for the first time, the uncomfortable truth that has followed him since May. They are still here. So is he. Neither has truly won. Years later, 1944, Weber will fight again, this time in Italy, in ruined monasteries and shattered towns where the enemy is often invisible and always determined. He will see echoes of Crete in every civilian doorway, every shadowed street. He will understand, more clearly than ever, why Crete mattered. Not because of what it proved about airborne warfare, but because of what it revealed about human resistance. Back in 1941, the aftermath of Crete ripples through German doctrine. Fallschirmjäger units are reorganized, re-equipped, redeployed as elite ground infantry rather than mass airborne formations. The lessons of Maleme, of Hill 107, of the Tavernidis Bridge, are written into manuals that few officers read and fewer still truly grasp. In London and Wellington, the story of Crete spreads too, of bravery, of sacrifice, of civilians who fought alongside soldiers. Memorials are planned for men who will never return. In Cretan villages, the story is simpler. They remember. Names are spoken in hushed voices. Families gather in churchyards to mourn. Children grow up hearing of May 20th, of parachutes in the sky, of men who fell from it like rain. Weber stands alone on the edge of the airfield as dusk settles. The sea glows copper beneath a dying sun. Wind carries the distant toll of a church bell from a village inland. Somewhere, a dog barks, then falls silent. He removes his helmet and holds it against his chest. In the fading light, he sees ghosts everywhere. A young paratrooper tangled in a cypress tree. A priest raising a rifle. A boy sprinting with a shotgun too big for his hands. Von der Heydt's calm face amid chaos. The burning runway at Maleme. The sky full of falling men. He understands now that Crete was never just a battle. It was a warning. A demonstration that technology, planning, and elite troops could seize ground, but not spirit. That civilians, when pushed to the edge, could shatter the illusion of easy war. That victory, even when achieved, could reshape strategy, shatter confidence, and haunt those who survived it. A final aircraft passes overhead, low and steady, a German transport bound for somewhere else in a war that only grows larger. Weber watches it until it disappears into the darkening horizon. Then he turns and walks back toward the barracks, boots crunching over the same dust that once drank so much blood. Behind him, the wind moves through the olive trees like a whisper. Crete remembers. And so, in his own way, does he.